My golden retriever Max saved my life, but not in the way you'd think. He didn't pull me from a fire or alert me to a medical emergency. He refused to enter my house for 3 straight days. And when the police finally arrived with a search warrant, what they found hiding in my attic made my blood run cold. My name is Jessica Monroe. I'm 32. I work as a graphic designer from home, and I live alone in a quiet suburban neighborhood in Oregon. Well, not completely alone. I have Max, my 5-year-old golden retriever, who's been my best friend and constant companion for the past 4 years. My younger sister, Vanessa, lives about 2 hours away. She's a nurse, and we talk every single day. She's the person I call when anything goes wrong, big or small. I never imagined I'd be calling her about something like this. If you're watching from somewhere in the world right now, drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. And hit that subscribe button, because this story will change the way you look at your pets forever. 6 months ago, I bought my first house. It felt like the perfect fresh start after my divorce. The house was built in the 1940s, one of those charming older homes with hardwood floors that creak when you walk, and windows that let in the most beautiful morning light. It had character, history, and most importantly, it was mine. The best part was the large attic space on the second floor. I had all these plans to convert it into a home office, somewhere I could work without distractions, and maybe finally organize all the boxes I still hadn't unpacked. My life had fallen into a comfortable routine. I'd wake up around 7, take Max on a long walk through the neighborhood, come back and make coffee while he sprawled out on the kitchen floor. I'd work at my desk in the living room until lunch. Then we'd spend time in the backyard. Max would chase squirrels while I'd sit on the porch steps with my laptop, enjoying the fresh air. Evenings were our time to relax together on the couch, him curled up next to me while I watched TV or read. It was simple, peaceful, and exactly what I needed. Max was the easiest dog I'd ever known. He had his quirks like any dog, but he was predictable. He loved his routine as much as I did. Every morning, same walk route. Every evening, same spot on the couch. He was friendly with neighbors, great with kids, and never caused any trouble. That's why what happened on that Tuesday evening in late September caught me completely off guard. We'd just finished our usual evening walk. The weather was perfect. That early fall temperature where you need a light jacket, but the air still feels warm. Max had been his normal self the entire time, sniffing every tree, wagging his tail at passing joggers, pulling me toward the park like he always did. But when we got back to the house and I opened the front door, Max stopped dead in his tracks. He planted his feet firmly on the porch and refused to move forward. I thought he was being playful at first, maybe wanting to stay outside a little longer. I laughed and tugged gently on his leash. Nothing. I walked inside and called him. He sat down on the porch and stared at me. I grabbed his favorite treats from the kitchen, the ones that usually make him do backflips. I held them right at the doorway. He looked at the treats, looked at me, and then backed away from the door. I tried everything. His squeaky toy, his food bowl, even brought his water dish to the front step. Max just whined softly and laid down on the porch, his eyes locked on the open doorway like there was an invisible wall he couldn't cross. After 20 minutes of trying every trick I knew, I gave up. I sat down next to him on the porch steps, completely confused. Max rested his head on my lap and let out this long, heavy sigh. He wasn't acting sick or scared exactly. He was acting protective, almost like he was trying to keep me from going inside. But that didn't make any sense. We'd only been gone for 40 minutes. Nothing could have changed in that time. I ran my hand through his soft fur and looked at our house, the lights glowing warmly through the windows. Everything looked completely normal. I had no idea that normal was about to disappear. Wednesday morning arrived, and Max still wouldn't budge. I'd spent the entire night on the porch with him, dozing off in short, uncomfortable intervals while he stayed alert, his ears twitching at every sound. When the sun came up, I tried again to coax him inside. Same result. He backed away from the door like it might bite him. I was exhausted, confused, and starting to worry that something was seriously wrong with him. I called Vanessa while making coffee in the kitchen, keeping the front door open so I could see Max waiting on the porch. She answered on the second ring, her voice still groggy from her night shift at the hospital. I explained everything, and she immediately suggested Max might be sick or traumatized by something inside the house. Maybe there was a dead animal somewhere, or a gas leak, or some smell that only he could detect. That made sense to me, so I spent the next hour searching every single room. I checked under furniture, inside closets, behind appliances. I opened the basement door and walked down with a flashlight. Nothing looked disturbed. No strange odors, no signs of animals, no leaks. Everything was exactly as I'd left it yesterday. I opened every window in the house, thinking fresh air might help if there was some scent bothering him. Max approached the doorway when I called him, stretched his neck forward to sniff, and immediately flattened his ears against his head before backing away again. The look in his eyes wasn't confusion anymore. It was fear. By Wednesday afternoon, I knew I needed professional help. I loaded Max into my car, which he jumped into happily, and drove to our vet's office. Dr. Raymond Chen had been Max's vet since I adopted him, and he knew Max's entire medical history. I explained the situation while Dr. Chen examined him thoroughly. He checked Max's heart rate, his breathing, looked in his ears and eyes, felt his stomach and joints. After 20 minutes of tests, Dr. Chen smiled and told me Max was in perfect health. His vitals were strong, he showed no signs of pain or illness, and he was responding normally to every physical test. Dr. Chen suggested it might be a behavioral issue, possibly anxiety triggered by some change in our routine that I hadn't noticed. He recommended giving Max a few days to adjust and monitoring him for any physical symptoms that might develop. I left the office feeling more frustrated than reassured. If nothing was wrong with Max, then why was he acting this way? Thursday was my breaking point. I'd been sleeping in my car in the driveway for 2 nights, only going inside to shower and grab clean clothes while Max waited in the yard. My work was falling behind because I couldn't focus. I was running on maybe 3 hours of sleep. Vanessa called and offered to drive up immediately, but I told her I could handle it. I didn't want to admit how scared I was becoming, not of Max, but of not understanding what was happening. That evening, something changed. Max stood at the edge of the driveway as the sun was setting, staring up at my house. Specifically, he was staring at the second-floor window, the small window that looked into the attic. He started growling, this low rumbling sound that came from deep in his chest. I'd never heard him make that noise before. The hair along his back stood straight up and his body went rigid. I followed his gaze up to the attic window, but saw nothing except darkness behind the glass. The street was quiet. The neighbors were inside having dinner. And there I stood in my driveway, with my dog growling at my own house like it was haunted. Friday morning, I decided to call an animal behavioral specialist. Before I could even look up phone numbers, I heard a car door slam. 2 people in business casual clothes were walking up my driveway. The woman held up a badge. She introduced herself as Detective Lauren Briggs and her partner as Detective Marcus Wade. They asked if I was Jessica Monroe, if I lived alone, and if I'd noticed anything unusual lately. When I told them about Max refusing to enter the house for 4 days, their faces changed completely. Detective Briggs looked at her partner, then back at me, and asked for permission to search my house. Specifically, she wanted to search my attic. My heart dropped into my stomach. Detective Briggs must have seen the color drain from my face because she immediately asked if we could sit down. We stayed outside on the porch steps with Max between us, and she explained everything in a calm, steady voice that somehow made the words even more terrifying. They'd been tracking a suspect for 3 weeks, a man named Dylan Crow, who was wanted for multiple breaking and entering incidents. Across our county, he wasn't just a regular burglar. He had a disturbing pattern of hiding in the vacant spaces of homes where people lived alone, mostly women. Attics, basements, crawl spaces, anywhere he could stay concealed for days at a time. He would watch the residents, learn their routines, and in 2 confirmed cases, he'd assaulted his victims when he decided the time was right. Detective Wade added that a neighbor, 2 streets over, had reported seeing someone matching Dylan's description climbing onto a roof near my property 4 days ago, on Tuesday afternoon. They'd spent the past day reviewing security footage from homes in the area and found grainy video of a man entering through my attic vent while I was out walking Max. That was around 5 in the evening, right before Max refused to come inside. I couldn't breathe. My hands started shaking so badly that Detective Briggs gently took my phone from me when I tried to hold it. She asked if there was someone I could call, someone who could come stay with me. I managed to whisper Vanessa's name, and Detective Wade dialed the number for me. When my sister answered, I couldn't form words. Detective Briggs took the phone and explained the situation in that same calm voice, while I sat there trying to process what I was hearing. Someone had been living in my attic for 4 days. Someone had been in my house, above my bedroom, while I slept in my car outside because my dog knew. Max knew. Detective Briggs handed my phone back, and I heard Vanessa's voice, high and frightened, telling me she was getting in her car right now and would be there in 2 hours. I just nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Detective Briggs pulled out a consent form and explained they needed my permission to search the property. Her hand was already reaching for her radio to call for backup before I even finished signing my name. Within minutes, 4 more police cars arrived. Officers in uniform gathered on my lawn while the detectives explained the layout of my house. I told them the attic access was in the hallway upstairs, a pull-down ladder that I'd only used once when I first moved in. Detective Wade asked me to stay outside no matter what I heard. Max pressed against my leg, his warm, solid body the only thing keeping me grounded. I watched through my front window as the officers entered my house with their hands on their weapons. I could hear their footsteps moving through the rooms below, then the distinct creak of the stairs as they went up to the second floor. The house I'd loved 6 months ago suddenly looked like a stranger's home, a place where something terrible had been happening while I lived my normal life just feet away from danger. I heard the metallic scrape of the attic ladder being pulled down. Flashlight beams swept across the attic window from inside. There were voices, sharp commands that I couldn't make out clearly, and then more movement, heavy footsteps above, then coming down the stairs, faster than they'd gone up. Detective Briggs stood and positioned herself between me and the house. More police cars arrived with their lights flashing, but no sirens. Max's tail started wagging slightly for the first time in 4 days. He was still tense, but something had shifted in his body language. I realized he was relaxing because he could sense that whatever had been in our house was about to be removed. My dog had been trying to protect me this entire time, and I'd spent 4 days confused instead of terrified, which maybe was a blessing. Because if I'd known what was really happening, I don't think I could have survived the fear. The front door opened, and 2 officers emerged with a man in handcuffs between them. He was thin, maybe mid-30s, with greasy dark hair and clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks. His eyes scanned the street as they walked him to the patrol car, and for just a second, his gaze landed on me. I felt ice run through my veins. That look wasn't angry or scared. It was familiar, like he knew me, like we'd met before, even though I'd never seen this man in my entire life. Detective Wade pushed his head down as they loaded him into the back seat, and I realized I was holding my breath. Max let out a soft whine and licked my hand. Detective Briggs waited until the patrol car drove away before she came over and sat down next to me on the porch steps. She took a deep breath and asked if I was ready to hear what they'd found. I wasn't sure I was, but I nodded anyway because I needed to know. She explained that the man's name was Dylan Crow, 34 years old, and he'd been living in my attic since Tuesday evening. He had a sleeping bag tucked into the corner behind some boxes, empty food wrappers from granola bars and crackers, plastic bottles that he'd been using as a makeshift bathroom. But the worst part, the part that made Detective Briggs pause and choose her words carefully, was the notebook. Dylan had been keeping detailed notes about me. What time I woke up each morning, when I showered, how long I worked at my desk, what I made for meals, when I went to bed. He'd been watching me through the gaps in the attic floorboards and the air vents. The attic in those old houses isn't completely sealed off from the rooms below, and he'd found the perfect spots where he could see into my bedroom and the hallway. He knew my entire routine better than I knew it myself. Detective Briggs showed me a photocopy of 1 page from his notebook, and my stomach turned. He'd written my schedule hour by hour for 3 full days. He knew I talked to Vanessa every morning at 8. He He knew I ate lunch at noon. He knew I went to bed around 10:30 and read for 20 minutes before turning off the light. Detective Wade joined us and added that they'd also found a knife in Dylan's backpack, along with zip ties and duct tape. He pulled out his own notebook and explained that Dylan had done this before, to 2 other women in neighboring towns over the past year. One woman had been assaulted in her own home and barely escaped. The other had woken up to find him standing in her bedroom. Both cases were still open investigations because Dylan had disappeared before the police could arrest him. They'd been trying to track him down for months. Detective Wade's voice got quieter when he said that Dylan had written plans in his notebook for Friday night, for tonight, after I would have gone to sleep. He didn't tell me specific details of those plans, and I didn't ask. The look on his face told me everything I needed to know. If Max hadn't refused to enter the house, if I'd forced him inside or taken him to a kennel thinking he was being difficult, I would have been alone in that house for 4 nights, with a dangerous man living 10 feet above my bed, planning when and how to attack me. I couldn't hold it together anymore. I wrapped my arms around Max and sobbed into his fur. He stayed perfectly still and let me cry, occasionally licking my face like he understood I needed him. A car pulled up fast, and Vanessa jumped out before it even fully stopped. She ran across the lawn and pulled both of us into her arms. We sat there on the porch, the 3 of us holding each other, while police officers moved in and out of my house collecting evidence. Detective Briggs told me I'd need to stay somewhere else for a few days while they processed the crime scene. I couldn't imagine ever stepping foot in that house again. Max wagged his tail fully for the first time since Tuesday, sensing somehow that the danger had passed and I was finally safe. I stayed with Vanessa for 2 weeks and honestly couldn't bring myself to even drive past my house during that time. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured that man in my attic, watching me through the floorboards, listening to my phone conversations, learning everything about my life while I had no idea he existed. Vanessa took time off work to stay with me those first few days because I couldn't sleep. I'd wake up multiple times each night in a panic, convinced someone was in the room. Max slept pressed against me every single night, and his presence was the only thing that helped me feel even remotely safe. The police investigation moved quickly once they arrested Dylan. Detectives found evidence in his belongings that connected him to 4 other cases, not just the 2 they'd originally known about. 4 women who had experienced the same nightmare I almost experienced. 2 of them came forward after hearing about the arrest and shared their stories with investigators. Both mentioned that their pets had acted strangely before the attacks. One woman's cat had refused to stop yowling at the ceiling. Another woman's dog had barked at the basement door for days. They'd both dismissed it as animal behavior and never imagined the real reason behind it. After 2 weeks, I knew I had to go back. Vanessa drove me to the house and we walked through it together with Max leading the way. The police had finished processing the scene and removed all of Dylan's belongings, but I could still feel his presence somehow. The attic felt especially wrong. Vanessa helped me that entire first weekend. We installed a complete security system with cameras on every corner of the house, motion sensors on all the doors and windows, and an alarm that would alert the police directly if it was triggered. We changed every single lock, and I had a contractor come out to permanently seal the attic vent from the outside so no one could ever enter that way again. I couldn't afford to convert the attic into an office anymore after paying for all the security upgrades, but I didn't care. I never wanted to go up there again anyway. The most important change I made was adopting a second dog. I found Luna at a rescue shelter, a 3-year-old German Shepherd mix who'd been returned twice by families who said she was too alert and barked at everything. That sounded exactly like what I needed. Max and Luna bonded immediately, and having both of them in the house made me feel protected in a way the security system never could. It took months before the house started feeling like mine again. I moved my desk to a different room because I couldn't work in the spot where Dylan had watched me from above. I rearranged furniture and painted walls, anything to make the space feel different from what it had been. Vanessa visited every weekend for the first 2 months, and slowly, very slowly, I started sleeping through the night again. The court proceedings were difficult. I had to testify about what happened and see Dylan again in that courtroom. But knowing he was going to prison for a long time helped me move forward. He was sentenced to 18 years for multiple charges, including stalking, attempted assault, and breaking and entering. The judge specifically mentioned that Max's behavior had likely saved my life, which made me break down crying right there in court. I decided to share my story publicly because I wanted other people to understand something crucial. Trust your animals. They sense things we can't, things we're not built to detect. Changes in air pressure, unfamiliar scents, sounds beyond our hearing range, the presence of someone who shouldn't be there. Max knew someone was in that attic before I had any clue. His refusal to enter wasn't stubbornness or a behavior problem or anxiety. It was protection. He was telling me in the only way he could that our home wasn't safe. I'd spent 4 days confused and frustrated when I should have been listening to what he was trying to communicate. If you have pets and they start acting strange, really pay attention. Don't dismiss it as nothing. It might be nothing, but it also might be everything. People always say dogs are man's best friend, but Max was so much more than that to me. He was my guardian, my protector, my hero. I owe him my life, and that's not an exaggeration. Now, every time he hesitates at a door or stares at something I can't see or growls at a sound I didn't hear, I stop and pay attention. Because the one time I didn't listen carefully enough, I almost didn't get a second chance. Max is 9 years old now, and Luna just turned 6. We still live in that house, the one that almost became the worst mistake of my life, but instead taught me the most important lesson I've ever learned. Every evening, the three of us sit together in the backyard and watch the sun set. Max rests his head on my knee like he always does, and I scratch behind his ears while telling him thank you. I'll never stop thanking him. If this story made you think differently about the pets in your life, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me about a time your pet warned you about something. I read every single comment and I'd love to hear your stories. Trust your instincts, trust your gut, and most importantly, trust your animals. They might just save your life.